All right, most people think creative financing is some loophole that's going to get them sued, arrested, or even blacklisted by the banks in America. But here's the reality. In Illinois, the way we buy houses, subject to mortgage, is exactly built on long-standing real estate law, federal law, and contracts that have been around for decades. And in this video, I'm going to show you two things: where subject to fits into Illinois law, and how it became a real workable strategy, and also how we use that structure in real life to buy a house in Illinois. No money out of pocket, and about $600 a month in cash flow about 4 years ago. So if you ever wonder, how is this even legal, or how does this work step by step, stay with me. I'm going to walk you through every step of the way. Real quick, before we dive in, I'm not your attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice, and I'm definitely not telling you to run this out without talking to a qualified real estate attorney. I'm simply showing you how this law is set up in Illinois, how subject to fits inside that framework, and how I actually used it in real deals. All right, let's get right down to it. When we say subject to, here's what we're really talking about. The buyer takes ownership of the property, but the existing mortgage stays in the seller's name, and the buyer agrees to make the payments. It's that simple. It's not a formal loan assumption where the bank approves you and you put the mortgage in your name. It's a contractual structure. Title transfers, loan does not. You just step in and keep making the payments on the existing loan. So in Illinois, mortgages have been recognized in the law since the 1800s. We've had mortgage statutes, recorded requirements, and rules around deeds, assignments, all that good stuff for well over 100 years. We've got the Conveyance Act that says anything that affects title, deeds, mortgages, assignments needs to be recorded. That's how the public record knows who and what owns that property. So when we do a deal subject to in Illinois, we're not inventing some new magical creature here. We're just using the same tools, deeds, mortgages, and trusts, assignments, in a slightly different way. Now, there is one giant piece of this puzzle that changes how all this works nationwide, including Illinois: the Street Germain Dispository Institution Act of 1982. Here's what that did in plain English. It said, hey, banks, if you've got a due on sale clause in your mortgage, you're allowed to enforce it if your property changes hands now. It also carved out certain exemptions, like some family transfers and certain trust transfers where the banks can't call the loan due just because the title is transferred. Now, why does this matter to you? Because the subject to deal is literally just a transfer of ownership with an existing mortgage still standing there and a due on sale clause in most of these mortgages. So the federal law didn't just create a subject to. What it did was make due on sale clauses enforceable in a consistent way and define some situations where they're not. So now that we got that out of the way, that's the environment we're operating in. Now, people ask me all the time, what Illinois law says you can buy a house subject to mortgage? Well, the simple answer is there isn't a special subject to statute. Subject to simply is a contractual agreement built on an existing property law and structured by attorneys using deeds, addenda, and trusts. Illinois doesn't force every contract to be subject to. There's no magic line that in the state that makes sense. You and the seller choose the structure, the deal, that way, and your attorney paperclips the right documents together to make it legal and enforceable. So now, let's talk about how does this actually show up in the practice in Illinois. You typically see a purchase agreement, a subject to addendum, or some sort of creative financing addendum, sometimes in a land trust or any other entity taking over the title, and then all that gets recorded properly so there is a public record of who owns the property now and what liens are on it. The mortgage itself stays the same. Same loan number, same lender, same interest rate. The only thing that does change is who actually owns the house now and who is responsible contractually for making those payments. So now that we got the whole legal backdrop out of the way, let me now show you how I took those concepts of the mortgage stays in place, the deed transfers, due on sale clause still exists, contracts and recording, and it turns into a whole real deal with sellers with real problems and real cash flow for me. Now let's talk and walk through my subject to deal in Illinois step by step now. This deal started out exactly how a lot of deals start off. I pulled a list of failed ML listings on PropStream. These are properties that were listed with an agent, sat on the market a really long time, didn't sell for whatever reason, and the listing expired. Then I just hit them with a direct selling campaign using a program called Launch Control. My message is simple and straight to the point. Something like this. Your agent couldn't get your house sold, it sat way too long, and you didn't get the price that you wanted. If you're still interested in selling, I could take over and take you a look at other options. From there, the goal is not to keep texting them. The goal is to get them off the text and onto a phone. So they responded. We got a call, and I started asking pre-qualification questions. When did you buy the property? What was the current mortgage balance? What are your monthly payments? What are your taxes, insurance payment? Who's paying them? Why are you looking to sell? And what happened when you tried to list it first with a realtor? So I'm digging now. I want to know and here's what I discovered. They bought the house a few years ago with a VA loan. It was listed with a realtor for 159 days and the property never sold. The property value was around $160,000. The mortgage balance was about $179,000. So they're roughly about 20 grand underwater. The monthly payment was $1,140. The rents in that area at the time 4 years ago was $1,750 a month. Now they're over $2,300 a month. So right away, two things are true at the same time. It's a nightmare for them because they're underwater, but it's a great opportunity for me because I know the cash flow spread is solid. So now let's talk about their situation and what's their motivation for selling. On top of the numbers, here's their real life situation. He's in the Navy. He's being deployed to Texas. Him and his wife did not want to be long distance landlords. They couldn't afford the realtor fees, closing costs, taxes, and repairs. And by the time you add all that stuff up, you're talking about $10,000 just to get out of the house. So they're starting at negative equity, a payment that they don't want, a move across the country, no clean way out. That's what I mean when I say creative finance solves problems that traditional retail cannot. So now they got all that background information. Here's my thought process as an investor now. Equity position, they're negative, but I don't care about that right now. I care about the cash flow and the long-term loan terms. Number two, the cash flow. The payment to the mortgage company is $1,140, including taxes and insurance. The rent is $1,750 at the time. That's about $600 plus a month in spread before reserves and other expenses. Now the condition. The condition needs basically no work. It has all new appliances, new washer and dryer, new water softener. House is in pretty solid shape. Number four, I think about the exit strategy. With that spread, I can rent it long term, lease option it out, or later refinance or sell it if it makes sense. All right, so now the numbers check out, the condition checks out, and the seller is real pain that I can solve. Now it comes down to how am I going to structure the deal on paper. So now the offer. I told him straight up, look, if you list the property traditionally, you have to bring money to the table. If you walk away, you could wreck your credit or you could end up in foreclosure. What if I instead, you deed the property over to me, I take over your payments, you don't pay a dime of closing costs or realtor fees, and you walk away clean. It's not a complicated pitch. I'm just breaking out what the real solution is here. Now here's the basic way I structured on paper, and again, always using an attorney. Number one, the purchase agreement. We both signed a contract that clearly says I'm buying the property subject to mortgage with an existing mortgage in place. Number two, a subject to or creative financing addendum. Now this addendum spells out the loan stays in the seller's name, I make the payments, what happens if something does go wrong, who is responsible for taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Then number three, a deed transfer into a land trust. They sign a deed transferring the property into a land trust that I control personally. The land trust now owns the title. The mortgage stays secured against the property as normal. Now the recording. The deed and trust documents are properly recorded so the public records shows the new ownership. The payment structure, I set it up so the mortgage payment stays current. Either I pay it directly or I use a third-party service company to handle it. There was no cash exchange at closing, no earnest money, and no new loan. Just legal paperwork, a title transfer, and me keeping my obligation to make sure the loan gets paid and is in good standing. Now, why was this a win for the seller? For the seller, this was huge. They didn't have to bring any cash to the table, right? They were gonna have to bring $10,000 plus just to get out of the house. They avoid becoming a landlord all the way in Texas on a property that's in Illinois. No more stress about showings, repairs, buyers backing out, or even a foreclosure notice on the door. The credit is protected because the loan is being paid over time. Well, the next 6 to 12 months as payments keep posting, this actually helps them. So from their perspective, problem solved. Move on with their life, house is off the back. Now let's talk about why it's a win for me. For me as the investor, I got a cash flowing property in good condition. I don't have to qualify for a bank loan. I didn't have to put 20 to 25% down. I didn't have to wait 45 days or more for the closing and underwriting. I control the property using Illinois conveyance law, a subject to structure, a land trust, and a contract that clearly spells everything out. That's what creative financing looks like when it's actually done correctly. Now, I'm going to talk about what nobody wants to talk about, the risks, reality, and the responsibilities, the due on sale clause. Now let's address that scary word, due on sale clause. Almost every traditional mortgage has that language, and it says, if that property is sold or transferred, we could call the loan due in full. The federal law, the Garn-Straight-Germain, says lenders are allowed to enforce that with certain exceptions. So here's the reality. So in a subject to deal, that clause does exist. The lender can't call it due, but most don't. As long as the payments are on time and the insurance and taxes are handled, there is risk here. So as an investor, you need some backup reserves. You need a backup exit strategy, and you need to disclose the risk clearly with the seller in writing. And you need the attorney structure that it's done in clean as possible. So now when you take the property subject to, that seller's name's still on the note. If you screw that up and stop paying, that burns their credit, not yours. That's a massive responsibility you gotta take on. So if you're gonna do this, you need integrity. My rule is, you can't commit to making those payments no matter what, don't do the deal. So now let's talk about title insurance and systems. Behind the scenes, they're also the boring stuff, but very critical. Making sure the insurance lines up with the trust and the lender's requirements. Making sure the taxes are being paid, and having a servicing system, or at least a very tight process so nothing gets missed. So that's why, I'm going to say it again, get an attorney in your state who understands creative financing. Don't take this upon yourself. Not a generalist, not a cousin's divorce lawyer, someone who actually prepared these deals before and has a track record. So now let's talk about how you can start using subject to the right way. Let's start with education, not some huff and flight. If you're in Illinois or any other state that you want to start doing subject to deals, here's step one. It's not to go get a deal. Step one is to get educated. Learn the basics of your state's recording and conveyance rules. Understand the due on sale clause, and understand how trusts or entities are actually used, if at all, in your market. Start building relationships with creative financing friendly attorneys. Okay, now that we got all that out of the way, let's start building a lead machine for motivated sellers. Subject to doesn't work on every deal. You need the right type of seller, negative or low equity, job relocation, divorce, behind on their payments, or simply just wants out. That's why I specifically focus on failed MLS listings, pre-foreclosure listings, distressed or tired landlord lists, and I work with a lot of realtors who specialize in these areas as well. I target them with text campaigns, cold call, follow-up systems, or simple referrals from realtors. The more conversations you have with these people in real pain, the more subject to deals you're going to see. Now don't get overcomplicated with the conversation framework. When I'm talking to sellers, I'm not pitching subject to some fancy term. I'm simply asking them, what do you need? What's your pain point? What's stopping you from selling traditionally? And if I could take over your payment and handle everything, will that solve your problem? Only after I understand the pain do I explain, listen, we've got a good loan with good terms here. We don't need to pay this off today. I can step in and start making the payments, and you can move on with your life. Now let's bring this all full circle. Illinois law has recognized mortgages, deeds, and recording for over 100 years. Federal law in 1982 clarified how due on sale works and when lenders can enforce it. Subject to is not some magical strategy. It's contractual structure based on the top of those laws. I simply just used that framework in Illinois to buy this property with no money in the pocket, with existing VA loan at 2.3%. And with that, it brought me $600 a month of cash flow 4 years ago. Now it's over $800. I solved a real problem for the Navy family who simply needed to get out. So now, if this opened up your eyes to what's actually possible creative financing, you can do 3 things for me. Drop a comment below and say subject to if you want me to break down the actual documents and disclosures I used in that deal. Number 2, share this with someone who keeps saying, you can't do that, it's illegal. So if you can, let's see how it really works. And hit the subscribe button below so you don't miss another breakdown and you get more creative deals. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, or if you've been living on a rock and seeing me for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Subscribe below for some more kick-ass real estate content.